The great story of our time that is now evolving around AI, around Tesla, and around SpaceX is, of course, the data centers in space. This amazing and unbelievably big business idea, not just business idea, but economic concept and civilizational concept to bring AI compute into space, solve the space and energy problem by turning the power of the sun through solar flux into an infinite source of energy that is then directly converted into intelligence and therefore giving humanity infinite growth space, infinite ability to solve all problems. Ability, I'm not saying we solve all problems, but at least capacity to solve all problems, to design any future we want, to become reality engineers on steroids, and to have the first infinitely scalable business model by creating more and more satellites throughout the entire solar system until we cover the sun and have our great Kardashev 2 civilization. Unbelievable stuff that is so unbelievable because it is actually believable, because everyone now agrees on Wall Street, in institutional investments. Fidelity, I heard the head of private investments for Fidelity, which is a very conservative organization, agreeing with me. They're on board. They're saying this is happening. Let that sink in. And of course, there's a huge debate now between the Tesla shareholders, among themselves, among ourselves, here on X, on YouTube, and a fight is emerging between those Tesla shareholders who say, yes, merge me, great Elon, into SpaceX so we become one and dominate the universe. And the other side of the equation that says, wait a moment, I want my money. I invested in Tesla. We are now at the inflection point of cashing in into the robotaxi trajectory. SpaceX is nice, but it's pie in the sky and it's not going to happen anytime soon. It's going to be overvalued at IPO and then drop, whereas Tesla explodes. If you merge me now, you're abusing my patience. You're abusing the cash flow that's coming in to fund a pie in the sky project, a very big pie in an infinite sky, but still it's too far out. And I want today, for the first time on YouTube or on X, in the entire community here of investors and analysts and opinion leaders, provide you with a quantitative model that actually solves the problem. Not by telling you what you have to think, not by telling you if Rebellionaire is right or Alexander Mertz is right or who is right. That's not the business I am in. I don't care who's right. I just provide you a first quantitative model for share prices, more specifically market caps, because we don't have a share price for SpaceX yet, to shed some light on how I project the future of these two companies, of the merged entity, and how this all comes together. Now, I was inspired to do so, by the way, today by Rich Chu, who wrote this very critical assessment takedown of me and my take on Rebellionaire and my response to him or them. And of course here my Trump, China, Elon commentary. In a nutshell, you should read that. It's on X. Go on my X. And I reposted it and commented on it. First of all, kudos to Rich. I have nothing against criticism. I invite criticism and critical debate. And if you want to say, Joe, you're stupid, please do it as Rich did it. Because Rich did it respectfully, very good points, and helps me to refine the model and argue back, maybe even refine what I think. Because criticism is good if it's fact-based and logically argued and not ad hominem attacks. Like when I talk about Iran, I get all kinds of crazies. Here, Rich, I invite criticism like that. Let me explain what Rich said. Joe, again, disappointed by your view on the Tesla-SpaceX merger. So Rich is generally someone who likes my views, as he says later, but on the SpaceX-Tesla merger, he disagrees with my view that the merger is good. I'm on board. Go through with it. That's my view. He said, rather than being a massive bullish catalyst for Tesla as claimed by you, it's not exactly what I said, the one-to-one merger could actually be a significant downside risk for Tesla shareholders. Okay, now Rich elaborates. First, he says, the assumption that SpaceX's higher valuation will pull Tesla up ignores the mechanics of an IPO. If SpaceX goes public soon, now in June, its initial high valuation will likely be driven by a massive supply-demand imbalance, as demand from retail investors and passive index funds vastly outpaces the available float. He's right about that. Yes, IPOs are boosted. because of the imbalance. They are boosted unjustifiably from a fundamental perspective. I totally agree. I said the same thing, by the way. Once the lockup period expires and insider shares flood the market, the artificial scarcity vanishes. If Tesla is pegged to one-to-one with an asset that starts experiencing a post-hype valuation correction, SpaceX will act as an anchor dragging Tesla down, not a magnet pulling it up. I 100% agree. I think Rich elaborated on this in a very sophisticated way, and I wholeheartedly agree. This is exactly what's going to happen. Only that I wouldn't call it's dragging Tesla down, but the boost that we initially get will go down. It will deflate. There's no doubt about that SpaceX, in my mind, will deflate over time over the next 12 months after having a boosted IPO, because that's how it is, overvalued, going down a little bit. How much? We have to see. Second, Rich says, the two companies have diverging duration profiles. I agree too. Right now, they are completely different stages in their capital and monetization cycles. I wouldn't say completely different stages, but different stages. SpaceX is lagging Tesla, of course, in unlocking the super duper cash flows, even though Starlink is a significant, currently ramping opportunity. Not as big as Robotaxi, but massive. We are talking $1 trillion revenue. Tesla's duration profile is actively improving. Not just improving, Tesla's is exploding, I would argue. With the Robotaxi network ramping up, we are entering the harvest season. I will comment on that. I totally agree too. But when is the harvest season? Is it now or is it in 2027? We can't be totally sure on that. On the other hand, SpaceX is moving in the opposite direction. While Starlink is a great business, the new orbital data center narrative is highly capital intensive and years away from maturity. It is essentially a pie in the sky story for the next 3 years. I also agree to a very large extent, even though the devil is in the details and the next 3 years, that's debatable. What if it's the next 2 years? What if Robotaxi is actually delayed a little bit and it's not this year but early next year? What if the data centers are not a pie in the sky story for the next 3 years but for the next 2 years? Suddenly the whole argument shrinks together and only 1 year lag is in there. So I will get into that in a second with a model, with a quantitative mini model. The bottom line is, says Rich, if a one-to-one merger happens, Tesla shareholders are essentially being asked to trade a stake in a company that is finally realizing its long-term evaded autonomous cash flows for a stake in a company that is burning billions to build out space infrastructure. Yes, that is also entirely right. It is entirely plausible, and I'd argue highly probable, that over the next 3 years, Tesla valuation goes up organically based on real robotaxi revenue, while SpaceX's valuation stagnates or even declines substantially. I agree it's plausible, but I don't agree it's highly probable over the next 3 years. I think he's right over the next 2 years. That makes a big difference, as we will see in a second. The more I think about this merger, the more certain I am that I will vote against it based on both short-term and long-term reasons. What if Tesla can acquire a much smaller SpaceX? And now we get into hypotheticals. Of course, that's never going to happen because Elon is in charge and he's not going to do it. So, which is a part of our consideration. Elon is just in charge. Okay, let's face it. And voting against the merger is just going to derail the plan. It's not going to put another plan in place. That's maybe a bad moral argument, but it is a strong factual argument. Also, I can now clearly see that there is a systematic and coordinated push by those manipulators. They first tried to sell the plot of SpaceX acquiring Tesla at a premium of only 20 to 40%, likely due to the strong pushback from retail investors. They are pushing for the so-called merger of equals. However, by just using common sense, these manipulations can be seen through as a direct hit to Tesla's shareholders' interests. Here we are getting a little bit into conspiracy theories, even though sometimes conspiracy theories are a good thing, because they're conspiracies. I don't think there is like a plan to do these things. And then Rich concludes, I'm deeply disappointed that even Joe appears to be siding with the manipulators, abandoning his typically cool analytical approach. So first of all, I never side with anyone. I just have my opinions. Other people have their opinions. And sometimes we have the same opinions. That's it. And I do not care if I look like siding with someone or being against someone. You can also see it with Trump. I was extremely supportive for Trump. I was very critical with Trump with Iran. I think it's a disaster. I think he now did the right thing. And now I'm very pro-Trump, what he's doing in China and the things on remigration and all these things that are actually good. I'm not on anyone's side. I'm on the side of everyone in the sense that I want the best outcome for all of us. Let's go to my model and shed some light on what's actually happening here. So I created this little model here, very condensed. Okay, very condensed, and I want you to pay a little bit attention for a minute, even though it's just a table. Here's my argument. Here's my argument when I thought this through. First of all, we have Tesla's market cap. This is based on Pioneer Treasuries and Pioneer Reserves analytical work, my work, where we project Tesla's market cap. I'm not going to go into all the details. This is a discounted cash flow model, pretty conservative on the math. Base expectations on Robotaxi and Optimus. And I'm getting to these numbers by December 2029, 1.5 trillion for June 2026, or May, whatever, like now, right? We are at 1.4 trillion. We might go to 1.5 trillion very soon in the next couple of weeks. Let's say it's 1.5 trillion. Let's say at the merger we get 2.2 trillion because SpaceX is actually going to go IPO for 2.2 trillion, which I think is realistic, but who knows? Like whatever the number is. That's the magnet effect. That's a 46% increase in share price for Tesla if that link happens, okay? Just to understand that. My projection for Tesla without the merger, this is without the merger, by the way, is that we end up at 2 trillion end of this year. Based on fundamentals, that's the fair value of Tesla end of this year. We go to 3 trillion next year. We go to 5 trillion 2028 and 8 trillion 2029, just based on basic, relatively reasonable Robotaxi scaling and Optimus scaling later on, right? So maybe people think I'm crazy. Maybe people have higher numbers, lower numbers. I don't care. I'm pretty convinced this is the most reasonable projection of Tesla. Here you see the growth rate. So this is a little confusing here because that's the growth over the merger. So we are growing roughly, 46% this year, 50% next year, 66% the year after, and 60% the year after. Super high CAGR, of course. As I said, this is all like, of course, scenarios can go worse, can go better, whatever. This is the most likely outcome as we see it. That's the rational perspective on Tesla. If you're just rational, looking at the facts, projecting out, come out with a reasonable base model, that is how much money we would make as Tesla shareholders without a merger. We go from 1.5 trillion to 8 trillion. Now it's getting a little more speculative, but let me make my case here. I think SpaceX goes, and this is, by the way, much less reliable than my Tesla model because we are currently working with my analyst team on figuring that out and having more robust data. But what I see so far, here's a reasonable guess. So don't blame me if I change these numbers in 2 or 3 weeks when we have more robust projections. But my gut tells me that's roughly what we are looking at, okay? I do think 2.2 trillion likely. I absolutely agree with Rich. See a deflation after the IPO. So we might end up in December significantly below that. I think 30% down, very likely, very possible. Because let's face it, a 500 PE is not the smartest thing to do. So it's super hyped because it's such an insane opportunity. But we have a long way to go to get significant cash flows into SpaceX. And with significant, I don't mean 100 billion in Starlink. I mean like significant for a company that wants to be valued at, trillions and trillions of dollars. So yes, I think we deflate. I think by end of 2027, there will be ups and downs, but the most likely outcome is we are still below the IPO by end of next year because of the lagging cash flow. Now, I will comment on this in a second. I do think we will have an upside surprise in the speed of orbital AI build out and by additional contracts on Starlink that are not being accounted for. And I will have much more coming. We are preparing a big push into SpaceX analytics. We find all kinds of super interesting things there, all kinds of additional business model, information as a service, national security, tons of stuff. So plus, my core thesis is that people are wrong on the timeline of orbital data centers. I think this will happen faster than people think. Conditional on Starship being ready this year and then being scaled in 2027. I don't know. That's the key risk for SpaceX is, will Starship be delayed in commercial operations? But I think we definitely crossed the Rubicon on Starship. This is not going to get delayed endlessly. I think SpaceX will be at 2 trillion end of 2027 roughly, and then will go on its growth trajectory. And that growth trajectory will absolutely beat Tesla. Tesla will grow at 50% or something a year, maybe 40% then long term, based on Optimus and everything. I think SpaceX will grow sustainably faster and will kick into hyper growth here and then flatten out a little bit, but it will flatten out not at Tesla's growth rate, but at a higher growth rate because their market is infinitely bigger than Tesla's. Because it's infinite, we have to understand space AI is infinite. You can just scale the hell out of it. You will run out of material on Earth, but then you have a moon base and you can just scale that at maximum speed into infinity. That's what most economists and people, of course, don't understand. But everyone who's a little logical understands, yeah, infinite demand for intelligence. Until something bad happens, that's a different story. So that's how I see it. Okay, that's the most reasonable thing. And you see a little bit what Rich was saying is actually true, only it's more compressed than he thinks. And maybe the upside is a little more aggressive. So he's right. We are going up, then we are going down, then we are flat, and then we are going up. Only that I think we are going up already again in 2028. So I made it simple, assumed a merger of equals, and now we get to the interesting thing. Here's your growth rate for Tesla, growing up 40, or we grow 37% in 2025, grow 50% next year, 66% in 2028, I'm talking stock price, and 60% here. That's the money you get. 37%, 50%, 66%, 60%. Beautiful, amazing, okay? If we merge with SpaceX, and this is just being summed up, there might be some little additional synergies, but it's just summed up. Here's the growth you get, okay? You still get your 37%, or are you getting a little, like, this is actually a bad number. I didn't even compute exactly how much you get here. That's bad. But in 2027, you're getting 38%. Instead of 50%, you're getting 38%. Rich is correct that for the next 18 months, we are looking worse. Okay, for the next 18 months, the odds that a SpaceX merger is bad for Tesla shareholders is high. I would bet on the merger between SpaceX and Tesla for the next 18 months until end of December, or whatever it is, 20 months, until the end of next year will be worse. But it will not be much worse. Instead of, if you invest $1 million now, not now, if you invest $1 million after the merger, instead of making $500,000 on your million, you make $380,000 and $89,000. So sure, it's a little shortchanging. But then you see what happens. In my first real rough model already, if you invest $1 million here, you make $800,000, and with Tesla you only make $666,000. Then you make $600,000 with Tesla, and here you make $880,000 in the combined entity. And that exactly reflects, this model exactly reflects what my gut also tells me. On an 18 months horizon from now, SpaceX Tesla merger is bad for Tesla shareholders, but not really bad. Hey, on this channel, we do something very important. We deeply analyze, understand, and predict capital, AGI, and politics. Not just to beat the markets and make a lot of money, even though that's important, but also to build a new society and make the future good for all of us, the pioneers. If you want to help me on this journey, you can do that by doing a very simple thing. Like and subscribe. It helps me a lot. Thank you so much for your support. And let's get back to the video. It's just not as good as not merging on the share price by December 2027 if we would merge basically in the second half of this year in 2026. But already in 2028, already starting after 18 months from now, after 20 months from now, the merged entity will outperform Tesla. And of course, on a long horizon, you already win by 2029, the whole merger will already have made more money to Tesla shareholders than Tesla would have alone. That is my first take. I wanted to present this to you guys so you understand how I think around that. This reflects roughly exactly what my gut tells me. I have high conviction in this piece. I have medium to high conviction in this piece directionally, but don't blame me when we come out at 8 trillion or 10 trillion or 11 trillion here. Because I don't know yet. We have to, we don't have a refined model yet for SpaceX. So these numbers are a little bit up for debate, but directionally, that's exactly what I believe will happen, that by December 2029, SpaceX alone would be bigger than Tesla because people do not fully comprehend what is happening on Earth, what is happening with data centers, what is happening to the human civilization and economy, and the role AI plays in it, and the role data centers play in AI, and the energy bottlenecks that are happening, and the enormous trillions, tens of trillions dollars of pressure on getting this to space. There is literally no limit to the power and money that pushes this to space, and everything hinges on Starship being ready. And if you believe Starship will be commercially ready next year, and we will be able to produce hundreds of these things next year, maybe by 2028, then there is no holding back. This will be by an enormous distance the biggest business model ever invented. It's not even close. It's going to be ridiculous. Why am I saying this? Because artificial intelligence AGI, which is here now, we have completely reached and breached economic AGI. That's a different video, but we are at the breach point in the next, I would say, 3 months to achieve more or less complete economic AGI, total replacements of white collar jobs, and from there it's just upwards. Now we have created a situation where the entire civilizational value creation is being funneled into the central bottleneck of AI. And so everything humans do, the entire human economy, is literally focused on SpaceX. That's what it is. Because there is no way out of the energy problem. There's just no way out other than space actually out. And everything on that front is more or less ready. This is all child's play in terms of R&D. What has to happen on these satellites. The only non-child's play is Starship, and this thing is more or less ready. That's how I see it. There you have the numbers. On an 18-month horizon, I think it's bad for Tesla shareholders. On an 18-month plus horizon, I think it's very good for Tesla shareholders. I hope that was helpful. Let me know what you think. We will refine this model and get you much more accurate data very soon, or predictions. Keep watching what's happening here, and see you very soon.